Brilliant. Today we're joined by the wonderful Malcolm Rippeth. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I wonder if we could start off with just a little bit about you and your background and sort of how you got to where you are now.
Okay, just a simple question, a simple
A small question.
Hi everyone, really nice to sort of meet you all, or at least see your blank screens. So I'm Malcolm, I'm a freelance lighting designer. How far back do you want me to go? Do you want me to go back to childhood, or...
Oh, go on, yeah, go on.
Or... God. So I grew up in a little village in the northeast of England initially, and I got really excited about lighting when I was 5 years old because there were loads of power cuts. And we lived above a little shop, and the shop was lit by a single fluorescent tube, except when there was a power cut, it was lit by candles and tilly lamps and torches and all this kind of stuff. And it was really exciting. And it went from being a completely ordinary thing downstairs to being this magical world. I thought, wow, lighting's brilliant. I had a torch, because I had my own torch. I got very excited about things I could do with my torch. And that same winter, we went to the theatre for the first time. My parents weren't really theatre people at all, but we went to see a pantomime. And my mum was a brown owl in the Brownies, and the pantomime dame got the binoculars out. This is a very short version of this story. To have a scan around the auditorium to go, who shall I pick on to get on stage today? And 600 little girls in brown dresses. This is the most inappropriate thing he could have done, was pick the only boy in the audience, which was me. So that did kind of change my life, because I ended up on stage going, wow, they've got lights in this thing called a theatre. This is exciting as well. So I thought, lighting, theatre, I'll do that. So that was when I was 5, and here I am, still doing it today, which may show a profound lack of imagination on doing anything else, which I need to pick up on right now because there's not a whole lot going on. So maybe I could have a think about something else to do, but basically I stuck with it for all that time. I guess I started doing things at secondary school. We had a few, like 12 Fresnels knocking around, and started lighting everything there was to light at school to skive off lessons, partially to skive off and partially just because I did really enjoy doing it. And then, went to sixth form, thought I'd be studying electronic engineering because that seemed like the right thing to do at university, and went in for my interview studying maths and physics at A-level. Went in to see the academic advisor, who said, electronic engineering, you want to be a theatre lighting designer. Do you think you'll enjoy studying that? It's like, no, I don't really think I'll enjoy it. No, but it seems like the right thing to do. And he said, maybe look at this list of degree subjects and pick something you think you might enjoy doing. And I picked drama off the list. And dumped further maths to study English, was already studying theatre studies, went to university in Hull studying drama, where they don't really teach you anything about lighting. But there was a studio theatre full of lights, and I started making it up as I went along. So I've never really been taught lighting design. It has been a matter of making it up. I have been taught, I guess, quite a lot about theatre and discovered about collaborating with people just through the process of doing it at university. Then came out of that, because it's a kind of academic little bubble in Hull. They don't have visiting lecturers or anything like that. Well, they didn't at the time. So I came out of university with no contacts whatsoever. That was the challenging bit. But I was moving to London. I was, 20. I was kind of overexcited. So I did have a lot of fun. I had no idea how to go about doing this thing called being a lighting designer. So I did some bar jobs. And then eventually ran to someone who told me that the Man in the Moon, which was a little pub theatre on the King's Road, needed a technical manager. And so I phoned them up. And they gave me the job on the phone there and then, just because I'd phoned them up, which was wildly idiotic of them, because I didn't really have the skills to do the job. But I did, and started lighting odd fringe things, because there were forever shows coming in with lighting designers, which I'd learned a lot from, but also shows that didn't really have lighting designers attached to them. And I ended up lighting one show on the fringe, lighting another show on the fringe, meeting other directors, and then ending up all over the London Fringe for a few years, which was really enjoyable, and I learned a huge amount, but I wasn't really earning any money. I mean, it's not a classic career path, is it? But it worked out in the end. Realised that I needed to make a bit of a jump somehow to actually start getting paid properly as we do get paid in this country for being lighting designers.
Yeah.
And thought, and started to learn that actually that wasn't through setting myself up, coming out of university going, I am a lighting designer. It was using the skills I had to meet people and gain experience in different ways. So I was a technician at the Almeida for a while, mainly freelance. I spent 6 months doing a long-term project for them at a found space, the Gainsborough Studios in Shoreditch, which then went around the world. That went to New York and Tokyo, the shows we did there. So that taught me a lot. But still, that wasn't going to get me to be a lighting designer of any scale. So I thought I'd do some relights. And I think you've just had Bruno Poet recently.
Yes.
Here. So my first proper relight was for Bruno Poet in the year 2001. And that was English Touring Theatre. We'd met through the Edinburgh Fringe. I'd been production managing lots of comedy on the Edinburgh Fringe because a random contact that I'd made, and also lighting odd things on the Edinburgh Fringe as a result of that connection. And after a couple of years doing relights for Bruno Poet, Ben Ormerod, some Almeida relights for Mark Henderson, an associate job with Hartley T.A. Kemp, people started offering me lighting design work.
Yeah, brilliant.
Which was probably 2002. And yeah, from then on, I pretty much, I'd say there's a little crossover there. By 2004, I was just doing lighting design.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of journey. And then, I guess in 2002, I met the two most important people in my career. One of which is Liv Laurent, who's a choreographer that not very many people will have heard of, who has a company in Newcastle, who make a new production every year. And we've been a constant through that whole period. So we make a show every year pretty much.
Brilliant.
And also randomly met Emma Rice, who at the time was running Knee High down in Cornwall. In fact, she wasn't even running Knee High. She wasn't the artistic director at that point, but she was there. And through a Newcastle connection from the Northeast, but also one of my colleagues from university ended up there. I'd let her show for Northern Stage. And it's all accidents, isn't it? It's all accidents and synchronicity and finding out where you are on the right day. I'd lit a show for this guy in Newcastle. Northern Stage were co-producing with Knee High. Neil Murray, who was my director in Newcastle, said, I want Malcolm to light this show. And Emma Rice at Knee High in Cornwall went, I want my lighting designer to light this show. And they had a fight about it. Neil won. It turned out the lighting designer that Emma normally worked with was also a production manager, and that we were friends anyway.
Okay.
So I started working with Emma Rice. We must have done 20 or 30 shows together by now, which have gone around the world over the years. Her career has gone from Knee High to running Shakespeare's Globe to now having her own company, Wise Children. And that's the core of what I love doing.
Yeah.
Working with Emma and the kind of work that she makes. And I think that's made me the lighting designer that I am. Particular her way of working, it's very much being in the room. You're all a member of the same team. There's no actors over here, creatives over here. Let's decide things here. It's all having dinner together, having lunch together as a whole company every day, going out for a run together every morning. Just really getting to know everybody who's involved in the process, and not just being a lighting designer. Like I wouldn't say I professionally take on any other roles, but we're all feeding into the process constantly. And that has taught me so much about how to work in the way that I do. Has kind of formed the process that I now have. When I now work with lots of different people. But I think it's what I learned through working with her that's kind of made me who I am.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And I was mainly doing theatre, and then I guess I was doing a lot of new plays at regional venues. I was doing a lot of different kinds of work, but there's a lot of stuff that was new plays at regional venues. And I kind of got bored of them. It's like new writing is incredibly important, but when forever lighting a playwright's first play, and to a small audience at regional theatre, it'll be the piece of new writing which isn't for the big crowd. I thought, I can't keep lighting these. I'm going to get bored if I do too many more of these. Because occasionally they're incredible, but quite often they weren't really getting me excited. And I thought I'll try getting into opera. And again, a couple of things fell into place. A director I worked with a lot in theatre suddenly got offered an opera show. at a festival, and then I did that, and then the festival, which was the Buxton Festival, offered me more work. And at that point, there was some opera on my CV. So when things came in, I was no longer someone who wasn't allowed to light opera because I hadn't lit opera. Which I think is a challenge all through my career. I haven't been able to do things because I haven't done them before. And it's a matter of breaking into that thing. Like the first time I worked at Chichester, they said, "Oh, you know, Malcolm's never lit a thrust stage before, so you can't work at Chichester Festival Theatre." And then we pointed out that I'd lit the thrust stage at the Guthrie in Minneapolis because Emma had toured there, and then they'd taken me on to light a show for them. Yeah. And like, oh, I suppose he has, yeah. And there's the RC as well. And it's kind of breaking down those little things. And with opera, having never lit an opera, I was never going to get a show in opera. But then once I randomly got a couple, people sort of thought it was okay. Yeah. And now I'm doing more opera. And it seems to me from my diary that it's the opera that is currently booking a little bit further ahead, as they always book further ahead. So I've got quite a bit of opera in the diary next year, where I haven't got any theatre in the diary next year. I've got the Vegas theatre pencils, like we really intend to do this, but whereas we've got opera houses going, we're just going to make this happen. Yeah. They have to book singers and they have to book an orchestra, and therefore they have to book a lighting designer and figure out how to do that. Whereas theatre can be a little bit more short notice. Yeah, definitely. That's brilliant. One of the things that obviously you've done with Emma is Romantics Anonymous at Bristol Vic that we were just speaking about before we started this. I wonder, it's just been live streamed to the world, really. Could you tell us a bit about how was that as a process? Well, it's the show we made at Shakespeare's Globe back in 2017 in the San Wanamaker Playhouse, which is the theoretically candlelit playhouse. Yeah. Emma was on her way out at that point, and we were like, we don't care about this anymore. We care about the audience, we care about putting on great work, but the rule about candles, which we'd really played with, had a brilliant time lighting shows with candles the previous season, which went, yeah, let's throw everything we've got at it. So it was a really enjoyable musical then, and it was coming back this January, just gone, when we made it at Bristol Old Vic prior to a US tour. The US tour got cancelled at quite short notice. I was about to fly to Los Angeles and got a call 48 hours before I was due to fly saying, our board have pulled the show, from the artistic director of the theatre, saying he's furious with his board. The board have pulled the show because of the COVID thing that we knew was happening, but no one had locked down really by that point. Yeah. We all thought they were overreacting. By the time we got to what would have been press night in Los Angeles, the whole of California had locked down. It was about 3 days before we did here. So that tour never happened, but we still had this show and this ambition for the show. And Emma's company, Wise Children, have been really keen on trying to make work through this period. And I think a lot of bigger organisations, kind of building-based companies, have struggled, and they're starting to come out of it now with lots of very good ideas on how to get going. Whereas Emma, they're a really small group of people. Just like, what is it that we can do in this period of time? We ran a summer school, teaching all kinds of different disciplines over the summer, and this came up as why don't we live stream this show? We can get on stage at Bristol Old Vic, and rather than put out a recording, because the recording of Wise Children, the show, went out on the BBC, and it was one of the NT Live, weekly NT Live things that went out. Why don't we do it live to kind of get live theatre back? So we did it 5 nights last week, teched it the week prior with a company who were all a bubble, who were all tested rigorously, and then had to isolate separately, and then they all got tested again, had to isolate as a group, and we had to make it on a budget. So I've done quite a few shows that have been filmed, but they've been filmed at the kind of NT Live scale. For the RSC, for Wise Children, and there's an outside broadcast truck outside with a bunch of extremely professional people with racks and tons of monitors and someone calling the shots, and this is all their special jobs, and lots of technicians and professional cameramen, and usually a TV lighting director sitting next to me going, maybe if you do a little tiny bit of this to the lighting, I'm not telling you what to do, you get like Bernie Davis or someone who's brilliant. Do a little time, if you want to, you could do a little time, so that might help here, but also he's going to call loads of things to the camera people and to the racks people to go, you can tweak all of these things as we go live through the show, because he knows exactly how all this kit behaves.
Yeah.
We didn't have that. We were doing it on a budget. We bought 3 4K cameras and the right software and a little bit of hardware. And Simon Baker, who's the sound designer on the show, figured out how to make a live stream. Now, how to do this? The big challenge for lighting is that all the cameras were on a single setting. So we figured out on the first day, what we thought the best setting was going to be, and then started relighting the show for that. So as where I've done things like this before, we've tweaked the lighting a little bit. And you do obvious things like you pull the follow spots. If there are follow spots, you pull those back a bit, because otherwise everything else bleaches out. You maybe ease a little bit of light into the background so it doesn't vanish into black because of the way the camera's contrast settings are working. We just had to change everything. So instead of having monitors either side, I just ended up with the biggest monitor I could find right in front of me, so I couldn't really see the stage anymore. Another monitor with all the preview cameras, and my lighting the EOS feed over on the other side, and I just taught myself not to look at the stage because it got more and more horrible on stage and better on camera as the week went on. And brilliant thing, on Sunday we had a live audience come in. They had Fresh Velvet went, "We've got a show on stage, can you please do an extra performance for us so that we can test our model for how we actually get some people in here?" And they had an audience of 170 in on Sunday night out of what would normally be 650. And the show they saw would have been so horrible to look at. It seems from the show report and from people I've talked to like it went amazingly, because everyone's going to be so enthusiastic and overexcited to be back in the theatre. It's a gorgeous show, but the lighting was a travesty. And it was everything from the colours in really, like, we were using lusters mostly. The colour just coming out, the tungsten coming out yellow on camera. Like, how do we remix our tungsten so it looks like tungsten on camera? How do we remix daylight? All of the moving lights looking awful. Things from one angle just looking horribly overlit, other things looking really dark. Neon just bleaching everything out.
Gosh.
So it was a lesson in not looking at the stage, which is always the case when filming. But on this occasion, I really had to ban myself from looking at stage because it was so ugly. I'm learning a bit about how to light for camera, more than I have previously, because I've had to do so little previously. So it's actually a really useful exercise for me, because I guess there's going to be more of this.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting.
Either as a just streaming model or as a mixed live audience and live stream or being recorded. That kind of thing. So it's a really good exercise.
To not have that team around you, like you say, that you would normally, like the Bernie Davises of the world and stuff. That's interesting. I see what you mean. It's quite a steep learning curve, isn't it?
Yeah, but for everybody involved. So we were all, looking out for each other as a team. I'm really lucky that's Emma Rice's team, who are the people I've been with for the last almost 20 years now. So we were all learning and getting it right and getting it wrong together.
So obviously we're here to sort of talk about the opposite of that, which is working with rep rigs, really. I mean, a huge amount of what you do covers both a rep rig that's maybe given to you, or like a sort of fixed kind of rig, or one that you've designed yourself. And I mean, I want to talk a little bit about both, but if we start with the former, where you're given a rep rig to work with, I mean,
which is the usual, like getting to design a rep rig is a really unusual thing for anyone to get to do.
Totally, and I mean, when you approach a design, when it's that rig, I mean, how do you start that process? Because I imagine you still have, the normal sort of artistic ideas as you are, but you've got physical sort of limitations of a rig. So do you just talk about the story, or do you think from the start about those limits that might be around?
I've kind of learned over time, and it was a pretty steep curve at the start, to stick to my normal process, which is definitely being in rehearsals and having conversations and coming up with visual ideas, senses of atmosphere and place and time if we're anywhere vaguely realistic, or what the big abstract pictures can be. Thinking about stage pictures, painting pictures in my head, and then a normal process would be backwards engineering those pictures into a rig. And in this occasion, you've got to try and go, can I paint that picture with what this rig already is,
Yeah.
or is there a better idea? And you start turning on different bits of that rig in your head and going, there are ways of doing something maybe even better than what I thought. And hopefully the pictures we see on stage are always better than the pictures in our heads.
Yeah, of course.
That's all part of the fun. But that was a learning curve. So to start with, I started thinking way too much about what the rig is. Every decision I was making in a meeting or in a rehearsal room was like, how am I going to light this, rather than really starting with the creative, artistic impulse.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to train myself out of that. And that was probably back at the RSC, maybe 2007 or something.
Yeah.
One, getting really bogged down in thinking about how to do everything technically with the rig that existed, rather than really fleshing out the why, what it's going to be and why. Because once you've got the what of the picture and the why of that picture, like understanding why it is that you want it to be like that, what the meaning is visually, what the meaning is narratively, you've then got a whole lot more information to then go into the rig, into the technical business of it, and work out. You can't make your first picture, can you make something better, something different?
Yeah, completely. And it's tricky, I think. Sometimes those kinds of rigs can feel very sort of I suppose gradular or sort of general sometimes. I mean, how do you sort of mentioned there about turning things on in your head. I mean, how do you translate those artistic ideas into, a spot wash situation or whatever it is? I mean, do you do a lot of that before plotting, or is it only once you get to plotting that you're like, I can now do this?
My practice is I usually go into tech with a really strongly planned plan A. And that's never what it's going to be at the end of the day, but I need to know what I'm going to try first. And hopefully there's a better idea.
Hiding in there.
Which I would say part of Emma Rice's process, I think, and she sort of agrees with me when I say this to her, but she doesn't really advertise it, is that she'll go into a rehearsal process with plan A. Actually, it's plan B. She goes into a rehearsal process with plan B, which is, this is a way we could make the show which will work and it'll be really, really good. But what she's hoping for is that all the people in the room will make something completely different and unexpected. It's sort of a backup plan.
Yeah.
Go into the room with total confidence, going, there is a way of making this work, but we're going to find out from all the brilliant other people in the room that there's something even better.
Yeah.
Which isn't lighting slightly different, because I'm going with a plan A and it really is what I'm going to try and it really is what I think is going to work.
Yeah.
But it's a jumping off point. So everything is always cued. Every cue has to be in the stage manager's book before I go into the theatre. And I don't know about lots of other people's practice, but a lot of stage managers seem to find that slightly surprising. They're like, oh, why don't you just give me the cues during the tech? It's like, oh, terrible waste of everybody's time. Why would we have, maybe 50 or more people in a room all waiting for me to give you some information that we could do just the two of us in the space of an hour or two, sitting in a room in the days prior?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've always figured out what I'm going to try, but then of course there are happy accidents. Much better things that happen. You turn on that light and go, just pan it. This is the moving light. You turn it on and go, just pan it around and see how it catches the set. And it'll be doing things that I expected, and it'll do things that you didn't expect. And equally, during a generic focus session, something can come on which isn't pointing where you plan it to point, but always have your eyes peeled. It's tempting to stand there in the dark, the light comes on and just go, look at me. Have a look around and go, oh, what did it do when it first came on? That's interesting. Okay. Because the inspiration for how things are finally going to look comes in so many different ways. You can't all just be painting a picture in your head, although it's really important. But for me, the visual inspiration is all around us all the time.
I think you have so many sort of happy accidents almost, don't you, with the rep rig, because like you say, you turn something on that's not for this show, and you suddenly go, oh, I would never have thought that. That's fantastic. That's brilliant.
And I'd always go into a theatre that has a rep rig and see some shows. Like that 100%. I would, those shows might look nothing like anything I'm going to do, but I do that in any theatre anyway, just to get a feel for the space, because I think how it feels sitting as an audience member in a space is really important, because that's what we are. That's the end of our tech process, is an audience sitting in this room having an experience. So I want to have been that audience member and feel how that room is, but also learn about the positions and go, I could have a really good guess at what something on the front of house truss is going to look like when it hits someone's face and they're standing downstage.
Yeah.
But does it really? Is it exactly like that? Is the thing from the box boom quite like that? It's all educating. It's all learning all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's putting myself in that space. And with a rep rig, most particularly, the way someone uses something, you go, oh, that light, which has just been a little symbol on a piece of paper up till now, it's there, and it does that. That's great.
Yeah.
I wonder if I change that colour and took the go bar out, that would be really, really good.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you said about time as well, about to do with cues and stuff in the book. I mean, it's so, especially in the world of opera. I mean, those sessions, sort of rightly or wrongly, aren't for us. It feels, and I do think if the stage manager has all those things, you can just focus on lighting what's in front of you real time, because that is your time, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. I don't understand why anyone would want to spend time during a technical rehearsal doing something they could have done in advance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those times every minute is precious.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially it's stressful.
Yeah.
We've all had really, really good texts where your heart rate never rises, apart from because something's so really exciting. But there are other texts where things start going wrong and time starts slipping, and I don't want to be the person in the room, apart from when I really need it, to stop a tech and go, of course you're going to have to wait for lighting occasionally, but not for anything that we could have done in advance. That to me is kind of insulting to everyone else in the room.
Yeah, definitely. When you get that plan through from a venue or a festival or wherever it is, and they say, here's our rig, what's the one thing, or what is something that you really hope is going to be in that rig, or hope that isn't going to be in that rig, maybe?
Well, what you hope is that there's someone brilliant running it. Yeah. Because if there's someone brilliant as the head of lighting or the master electrician or whatever they're called in the organisation, then that rig will be good. And it might not make sense on paper immediately, but it will have developed over time to be what it is for lots of very good reasons. Yeah. And it's my job to understand why it's like that and go, I don't understand what these units are here for at all.
Yeah.
So ask the question, phone up and go, what are they, I don't want to sound stupid and I've never worked in your venue and you've never met me, but what are those lights for? And they go, it's because of this overhang, actually, the position you think that's really useful over here on the paper, that one's not very useful at all, but it's still there because occasionally it's actually those things that really work. Yeah. But you'd really like some moving lights, because then you can make whole new things on the fly.
Yeah.
They're not always going to be there. What I despair of, there's a couple of rigs, and they're UK opera rigs. There's Welsh National Opera and Opera North. They are what they are because they've been what they are for decades.
Right. Yeah.
They've got shows in their rep which are built around that rig, so that rig can't really change unless they pull out some generics and put in some moving lights instead, and then relight the shows that way. Yeah. Which they started doing. I was at English National Opera at the Coliseum in the autumn, and they, for us, because it was mainly a season of new work, 4 different lighting designers doing 4 new Orpheus shows, and the Mikado from their rep. And we all got together, the 4 lighting designers, we pulled the lighting budget, we went, we know we've got, £5,000 each of the lighting hire budget over 3 months. That's going to go to nothing. Yeah. All our resources, 20 grand, for the season. And we're going to have a few discussions and disagreements, but we're going to, at the end of the day, get the best things we can in the best places.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep pushing you to go, that little system of 4 park ends there, that is of no use to any of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go, but they're in the Mikado. But if we put a encore there instead, can you do the things that you need to do in the Mikado with that? And we go, and they kind of go into it. Actually, we can. It was a bit of a fight early on, but we managed to wheedle our way into that rig Of course, at the end of the season, it would have gone back to being what it was before.
Yeah.
Equally, Opera North and Welsh National Opera, there are no moving lights in the rig. There are Parcan, narrow source full zoom, a couple of Parcans, a 2K for an L. Like, I don't know what any of these things are for.
Yeah, yeah,
the pictures
absolutely.
in my head, I don't know how to make the pictures in my head with Parcan, narrow zoom, 2K for an L.
Yeah.
These things are a bit meaningless to me.
Yeah.
What's the budget? What can I spend on some things that I think can be useful, and what have you got sitting on the shelf? And there's always a list of, here's the 4K HMI if it's an opera house. And you're like, And 10 years ago, I'd have been really excited about 4K HMI.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, you've not got like a Solar Frame 3000, because that's going to do that job and do a whole load of other jobs as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's really interesting what you say about, and I'd never really thought of it like this, but what you sort of hope for is good management, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Because that's so much of a rep rig. And the sort of, what you're saying there about, but this is the way it's always been, and so on and so on. You get the other end of that, don't you, as well, which is, it's in this better position now because back in 1908 we did X, Y, and Z, and it just didn't see anything in that season. And there's such a wealth of knowledge with some of these places.
Yeah. But like Opera North and Welsh National Opera, they're nice companies, but they've had that rig for 20 or 30 years, or maybe it's an improvement. It's a 20-year-old improvement of the rig from 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It's really hard for them to unpick that when they're mainly bringing back shows, which is repertory. We are talking about a rig which can recreate something from 20 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they haven't got the resources to swap it out for more recent equipment.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a struggle for them. But then you find brilliant rep rigs as well.
Yeah.
It's the National Theatre or the RSC. They are on it, shifting their technology all the time. They've got rolling budget. Well, certainly the National, there was a rolling budget for, we will constantly make this rig better. And we're sorry about the VL1000 arcs. They will be replaced in 2 years' time.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the places I wanted to ask you. I was going to say, could you tell us a bit about how it works somewhere like Thenty? What sort of parameters do you get set when you approach something there?
So I've just done one show there, which was in the Olivier, which was last autumn. And again, they've got a brilliant head of lighting in their theatre. So lighting supervising the Olivier is Jack Williams, who is amazing. Head of lighting the organisation is Matt Drury, who was chief at the Royal Court, and Jack was chief of the Royal Court after him. And the Royal Court had a culture which astounded me when I started working there, which is that everybody read the play. Like, electricians read the play. Whatever that was coming up, they all knew about it. And they were all curious about how it was going to look and how you as a lighting designer were going to solve some of the challenges set by the text. So they were all engaged intellectually and creatively with what was going on. And I think that the Nationals have always, I sort of did something there 12 years ago as well. It's always been a pretty good place to work in terms of what the resources are available, but it's come up and up and up for the last few years.
Yeah.
And walking in there, the rig is incredible, and they know all the things that aren't quite perfect about it, and they're all, they're due to get fixed.
Yeah.
And they're not terrible things, because you've got some Sorcerer Revolutions front of house, and they are useless now because all the other lights are so bright.
Yeah, of course.
What can you do with a Sorcerer Revolution from 30 meters away?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And they just replaced all their HMIs and their 5Ks with Solar Frame 3000s.
Yeah.
Which just gives you a total gift of, here's a light with so much light coming out the front. And you don't have to always use it in that way, but it can go there.
Yeah.
Really a pretty decent rendition of daylight and tungsten and everything else that you need them to do.
Yeah.
So going in there, you get that. And it's really, I found it hard to get my head around the rep rig in the Olivier because there's so much of it.
Ooh.
And the positions are all very specific and they're all bespoke to the Olivier because it's such a peculiar shaped theatre.
Yeah.
But it's really good to work with. So going in there, you get that, which is then it is going in and seeing shows and going, oh, that's where that is. And that's, you've got lighting bars that are 15 metres up in the air. Going, it's really, really high. How does that work?
Yeah.
And these positions that are the ashtrays, which have got VL 500s on them, VL 500 washers, coming across, and they look stunning on people, but of course they spill out onto the concrete
Yeah.
either side. So they're gorgeous, and but can't use those all the time just to make it look gorgeous because they're making a spill over there. So you go in there, you get the rig, you get the supervisor you're going to have for your show. I had Jack, and they're all good, but I got Jack who I know well. And there is a pooled set of additional resources. There's the resources department downstairs, and there are a whole bunch of extra kit which can come into different theatres if you get in early enough to book it. So I think I got 20 odd GLP X4 bars.
Yeah.
On moving pipes going up and down, and a load more encores. I think they're encores, which we flew on sky hooks, so I could have backlight at any height I wanted, and that worked with the aesthetic of the show. Was being able to bring a backlight into floor level to come back through the set and blind the audience slightly up to head height, up to really long low shadow angle, and back out to the top, and to keep changing the scale of the space that way. So it's the best place to work in the world.
Yeah.
In terms of the resources available of anywhere I've been, that rep rig is superb, but it's a big beast to get the head round.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I imagine it takes quite a lot of brain power to, as you say, to sort of go, okay, so that thing on paper is that's half the battle, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And then sitting in the rehearsal room and really understanding what those tools are. And they probably are. It is probably possible to paint the picture in the head with that kit or something better, because it's a space on an epic scale, and my brain doesn't always work on quite that epic a scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I had the model in the room. We had the model in the rehearsal room the whole time, and I had a couple of those not very nice little LED gooseneck.
Oh yeah.
Quite spotty things, which are horrible when you have them on a production desk because they're just too bright and too spotty. But you put them at a model and go, I'm just going to move it into the position of that light, but I know where the light is in the rig, and you go,
yeah, nice.
That's good. Because you had quite a skeletal set that was throwing great shadows everywhere and an almost constantly moving revolve.
Okay.
And you have follow spots. We had 2 follow spots in there. But I guess one of the things with the rep rig is you quite often end up planning further ahead than you do when you're designing a rig from scratch, because you need to be able to get yourself into the positions that you need before somebody else grabs them.
Yeah.
You need to be budgeting and getting the best deal for those bits of kit that you're going to add in. Quite often the lead times are much longer, which involves having those big ideas much sooner. And certainly the bags eating the kit. Jack was bothering me like almost a year in advance going, tell me what you want. I'm like, no one's designed the set yet, Jack. He's like, I know, that would normally be a really good excuse for not drawing a lighting plan.
Yeah.
On this occasion, you're going to thank me if you just tell me what you want. I'm like, okay, let's have a guess.
Yeah.
And going into the theatre and seeing how that rep rig worked, and then figuring out what it was missing for me as a designer. The things that I might like to be in that rig.
Yeah, definitely.
And we shifted them around a bit once we actually knew what the set was, and as obviously the set developed over time, there was a set appeared, and that was twice the budget, so that got stripped back. But it's understanding what a rep rig can do, and also being really understanding what it can't do for you, and therefore what those extra resources are that you need.
Yeah, definitely. You sort of touched on A&O and the sort of the changes for that season particularly, but I mean, when you are sort of, I suppose, co-designing a rep rig in that way, I mean, so much of it is compromise, and it's so, when you do it on your own, you sort of feel like you're artistically compromising with yourself, and that's fine, and you sort of, things you give over to yourself, don't you? But when how do you prioritize someone else's idea over yours in that situation? I must have this. It's like pitching for who deserves it most, in a way.
I had this set that was in so many different configurations that I couldn't really figure out what I needed. And it's a whole new rig to me. It's like, I could sort of do with this angle, but actually if it was on batten 2 or batten 3, it could work in either. And I'd love a GLP backlight bar for colour thing, and stripes of colour and what they can do in the air. It was very colourful. It was an MRI, so quite colourful. Exciting, visually kind of wild thing. So what I did on that occasion was allow all the other 3 designers to come in with what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And go, that's interesting. That's interesting. Those things are of no use. Let me understand what it is that you need them for. Okay. If we moved those fixtures a metre on stage, would you still be able to do that? And they go, yeah, we could. I'm like, brilliant. Now that's incredibly useful to me because I've got Portal in the way of them where they are. And we had a whole GLP backlight system on a single bar.
Yeah.
Because John Clark put it there. I was like, thanks, John. That's exactly what I needed. And then he realised about a month later that actually that wasn't what he wanted at all. And we tied all the kit, and what he wanted was to split them out into multiple pipes, so they weren't a single long system. They were unit gap, unit gap, unit gap, and grid. And in his show, that looked stunning. And for me, I was like, And of course, because I hadn't pushed for that idea in the first place, when John went to change it, it got changed. And that's annoying. So I could have been a bit pushier on the front foot with that. But like 4 people, you can't all lead.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was leading on a couple of things that I knew I needed. I got a couple of Ghiblis, which they'd never heard of before there. And actually, I don't think any of the other designers had actually used them before. I went, this is the thing that I need. I need 1, 2, 3/4 backlights that are that bright. And those were always in the rig for me. And everything else was kind of, I'm wriggling it around a bit to get it into the best place. So it's useful for my show, as well as my show specific. So we had portals with light boxes in them, and we had to hire equipment for that, and that was absolutely mine. And they were of no use to anyone else because they were built into the set. Yeah. But yeah, it's a juggling thing. And we've done, so I do Garsington Opera most years, which isn't exactly a rep rig, but it's always a rig that's trying to light 4 operas. Yeah. And there have for the last handful of years always been 2 lighting designers. And if I'm doing 3 operas and someone else is doing 1, then I have first go on drawing a rig plan and go, how's this sort of thing for you, and what works and what doesn't work, and what else do you need out of this? With a bit of advanced conversation as well before I've gone for it. If I'm just doing 1, then I kind of encourage them to, the person who's doing 3, to have their thing, and then I go, how are you treating that as an offer of a rep rig for me, and going, what can work and what can't? Yeah. Because we can't have completely separate rigs. No. We've got a finite amount of money and a finite amount of space overhead. Yeah. So it has to be a negotiation. Yeah. And but when that is give and take. Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. When you are the sort of lead on that, I mean, what's your starting point for a rig like that? I mean, what's the first thing you put on a plan? All of the different sets in 3D. Yeah. I build a model. I weirdly use WYSIWYG. I think I'm like one of the only theatre lighting designers in the country who uses WYSIWYG. Okay. I started using it almost 20 years ago, and it's part of the way I think, and it's part of my process now. And Vectorworks, which I can see all of the wonders of Vectorworks, especially in terms of being able to communicate so much better because we're all using the same platform. But it doesn't allow me to hang a light on a pipe and turn it on really quickly. Yeah. So I'll build a 3D model of each set, and then go, how am I going to light this one? And there'll be ideas that have come out of model showings and conversation with directors. I go, okay, I'm going to have an array of Ghiblis doing backlights through these doors on Turn of the Screw, which is online at the moment, which is a really great show. And then I turn that set off, and I pop on another set and go, are they of any use to me here? Yeah, yeah. And you go, maybe if I tweak them a little bit like this. Hang on, let's look at the third set. And it's compromising each one and going, what's absolutely essential that has to be like this because it will just look so good for this one show, and what do I need to do to make that useful for everything else? Yeah. Because I can't have too many moving lights up there that are only going to be useful for one show. Yeah, absolutely. Ideally none. Ideally every bit of kit up there is flexible enough to do multiple jobs. Yeah. And you always want a moving light to be able to do multiple jobs on one show. In that case, you want one moving light to be able to do multiple jobs on at least 3 shows that I'm doing, and ideally the 4th show that someone else is doing. So yeah, building that model really tells me what those lights can see and what they're going to do, what's going to get in the way of them. What's going to get in the way of them in a really good way. Yeah. So it might be something that I'd never thought of, but I've put a fixture in the air for the Turn of the Screw. I turn on Don Giovanni and go, yeah, okay, they're not doing any of the things that I wanted to do in Don Giovanni, but let me just give them a little waggle around, and something interesting might well come up. You go,
Yeah.
actually, that's an exciting picture that could be part of this show.
Yeah, and I mean,
There's compromise, but it's exciting compromise.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of I said it earlier, but I mean, happy accident. It's sort of, you sort of feel like all these things that if you did actually have unlimited time and resources and all these things, would it actually look, sometimes you do come up with a better thing because of the limits around it.
Yeah.
And it looks beautiful, by the way, Turn of the Screw. If anybody's going to watch it, it is well worth a look.
I think it's still up, isn't it? I think
it is. It definitely is. Yeah. I mean, you've sort of mentioned Ghibli's there, but do you have a thing that if you could, you would always put in a rep rig, like a specific thing like that?
A particular piece of equipment, or a particular system, or
either, really. I mean, it's something that you're like, I'm going to push to have this in it.
A really good, very, very bright diagonal backlight.
Yeah.
Which could be a Ghibli. It's going to be something that bright. I mean, it would have been a Viper quite recently. It wouldn't be a Viper anymore because they're noisy and annoying, and they don't all look the same as each other, and the colour mixing's terrible, and the diffusion's lousy.
Yeah.
All the things we know, and they were brilliant. They were the best thing, and they're just not anymore. But yeah, it would be a Ghibli, or if they existed and were hireable, a Solar Frame 3000. Something really, really punchy that's going to get me a single shot. Yeah. That might be right. Like there are shows out there that I've lit that don't have that in them at all.
Yeah.
But if it's going to be in a rep rig, I think that'd be useful.
Definitely.
The other thing you want in rep rigs, and an end-on space, I'd like a really good cross-light cover that can change colour.
Yeah.
That's going to come in useful 100 times.
Yeah.
Even if you're just using one element of it to just glance someone's face.
Definitely.
And then some kind of area cover. And area covers are boring. They're so boring. But they're so useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just need to light someone's face there. I suppose I could go and find an aura that's spare up there, but you don't want to. You need to do it quickly, and you might need to have it on their face, and it's just bleeding away across the next few areas, so it all ties together as part of the same picture.
Yeah, definitely. It's so
slightly dull, 45 degree, probably slightly more to the side than to the front. Getting into people's eyes.
Yeah.
That is able to pick up people anywhere on stage.
Yeah, it goes back to the time thing, really, doesn't it? I mean, you just need, sometimes just having that thing you can just turn on and you just know it's there is so important.
And then that little director appears on your shoulder and goes, "Oh, can we just have a little bit more light on their face there?" Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's a pleasing angle from here or here, then it's probably not going to trash whatever else you were doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That little bit of extra. Sometimes you have to think about those things and, have a really good creative response to, can we have a little bit more light on someone's face? And I certainly work with directors who go, it can't be that difficult. Like, just, give me another 10 seconds and it'll be really good.
Yeah.
Or you turn on one thing and they go, "Oh, thanks." Like, no, give me another 10 seconds because I don't like what I'm looking at here.
That's not staying.
I your note, but this is not.
Yes.
This is not good enough.
Yeah. I remember a lighting designer very early on saying to me, I remember saying to them, I said, I find myself rarely using front cover, but I always sort of put it on the plan. And they were like, "Oh, it's the most fantastic thing to just keep a director quiet. You put it on, they're lit, and you can come back to in notes, and then you can make it look like how you want it to look. But it's a good pacifier," which I thought was actually a really good point.
I guess I'd shove a couple of movers up square on front of house as a just in case, but I'm not a fan of an area cover flat from the front.
No.
And just, you haven't asked the question, but the rep rig that I really hate is the standard American rep system, which is you're going to have a light from here at 45 degrees, a light from here at 45 degrees, a light from the front at 45 degrees, a top light and a backlight in every 8 foot, 10 foot, maybe 8 foot, 10 foot box across the entire stage. Like, I am probably going to use a handful of those things once or twice.
Yeah.
I've already, this thing, I'm probably going to make an appearance, but the top light and the backlight in a little area, what's it for? To me, as a designer, I don't know what to do with that. No, a lot of the shows in those venues are lit that way, but they're not because they're venues where shows keep coming back and they have to recreate them. Yeah. They're making new shows all the time. Chicago Shakespeare Theatre, Minneapolis, the Guthrie. but the rig is that. Like, it's so tedious.
Yeah, definitely.
Waste of, they've got 700 dimmers and 700 source walls, but I really don't know what they're for.
No. That sort of was one of the things I was going to say. It was about, budget. Because one of the big problems with those kind of rigs is that it's all spent on these area covers of things.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing 3 shows or more, that you've got to think about all of them artistically. Do you ever feel that your ideas are just completely let down because you just don't have the funds to beef up a rig or something?
Sometimes, yeah, but you fight, and if you're really not gonna get anywhere with it, then you've got to accept that and do something else. Make the best of the available resources, which isn't, that's not just a rep rig thing. That's lighting any show. The resources will be the resources, and it's about making the best use of those, be that people's time or the equipment available or whatever budget they may or may not be.
You
just got to get on with it.
Really.
I'm a fan of having a miniature sulk. You've got to, I suppose people might call that processing their emotions in a really positive way. I just like to think of just leave me alone for 2 minutes and have a little sulk about the fact this brilliant idea I had doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then you can come out of that and go, okay, now I can have a different idea and it's going to be fine. It's going to be completely fine. Which is, in any theatre, you've got to be prepared to let things go. The best scene in the show, certainly this is another lesson from working with Emma, is you have the most beautiful scene in a show. Because we used to devise work much more than we do now. And you'll end up doing a run through and go, the show's there's a lot of good stuff, but it does seem to be 3 hours long. And we don't want to make a show which is 3 hours long. We want to make a show which is 2 hours long. What do we cut? And it might be the best stuff. It might be the most beautiful lighting state that was in the tech that has to go. Or it might be that I've made a really nice picture on stage which just isn't the right picture, and that can take a while to accept. You go, oh, but it looks really nice.
Definitely.
But is it? And often this is a conversation I'm having with myself. It's going, but is it right? And that's when somebody appears and goes, oh, this looks great. I do agree, but it really has to go. Maybe we could use it somewhere else.
Absolutely. Pick your battles, isn't it? That's half the thing. When you have those conversations initially with a director and a designer and about the fact it's a rig for multiple productions, I feel personally like it can sometimes feel a little bit like you're making excuses if you say, oh, we can't do X, Y, Z because of whatever, and you try and put a positive spin on it and say, oh, but let's try this. But the reality is that there are sometimes more limits than with a rep system. Do you ever find that a hard conversation to have?
Yes, I guess. I've sort of forgotten how to do my job, I think, because I've had 6 months off, apart from doing a show last week with Emma. And I tend to bury not bury the bad experiences, but, things that didn't go so well. They tend to get, you learn from them, hopefully, but then they're sort of also forgotten about. So having difficult conversations with directors, they can be, it can be a challenge, especially with people I don't know so well. So when I'm working with people I know really well, I know which register to talk to them in. Some directors will respond well to a technical explanation of why something isn't possible. Or a financial conversation of why something isn't possible. And some, and this is just as good a way of working, if not better, is they don't want to hear about the tech. That's not how their minds are working, and it's not how my mind works. Basically, the tech is part of it. And that is about offering up something else. And when you've got a long-standing relationship, I think people will tend to trust me to go, we can't do that, but I'm going to show you something else, and we're going to find a way to make this work. Whereas with someone new, those conversations are always more difficult because maybe I haven't found the right register to talk in. Maybe we don't have the mutual trust for them to think that I'm not bullshitting them, or that I'm not incapable of delivering. It's not that I'm incapable of delivering what they want, or I don't understand what they want, or I don't have the skills that we need. It's just that something doesn't work. But hopefully you've largely had those conversations before we get into the theatre. about how things might be.
Yeah, it can just be hard, can't it? Because you do feel sometimes when you say, oh, they come out with some a fantastic idea, and you sort of say, oh, let's try and find another way. And you can see, especially with those new collaborators, you can see the moment of them going, bad workman blames his tools. And you're like, no, it's not like that at all.
If they said that, if they actually used that phrase, I'd be like, that's funny. I'm enjoying this. Yes. Thank you. Bad
Yeah.
I'm blaming his tools. And then you get on with it, because hopefully you're having a good humoured relationship. But yeah, if a director or someone was genuinely being snidey, I think I'd find that very difficult. I think I'm lucky that I haven't worked with too many people that I don't really get on with. And when I have, we tend only to do that the once.
I think it can go the other way as well, can't it? I've worked with directors on opera festivals where they sort of go, oh yeah, well, I would tell you what I want to do, but well, we're not going to be able to cover it because obviously like the limits and stuff. And you're like, no, please don't think like that. Please talk to me about the big dream. Talk to me about the big picture.
So, they should never, rein in their ideas because they think something isn't possible. And it's definitely my job to keep that door open. Exactly as you said. Tell me what your dream is. Because even if that isn't achievable, it gets me inside your head and inside what it is we're trying to do here, and I can have a creative response to that, which might be something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I've got to understand what is in a director's head, and that isn't necessarily what the exact nature of the lighting picture is, but understanding what it feels like to them, what it sounds like to them, what it smells like to them, where it's come from. If they're referencing a work of art or a film, or if they're referencing an emotion, or if there's just something in the story that feels really important to them they're not quite getting. Because I've got hung up on the fact that it looks good or it doesn't look good or whatever, but there's a bit of narrative here that we're not quite getting. I can fix that, or I can certainly help fix that.
Yeah, definitely. When we look at this sort of in-venue part of this, how do you go about something like the focus? I mean, do you do it on a particular set, or do you do it on an open stage, or how do you like to do it?
Well, I guess the only place I'm lighting multiple shows across one season would be Garsington, and there are so few generics left in that rig. That there isn't really a focus session.
Just sort of as and when.
It's all about moving lights. I mean, it's a total luxury. There's a cross-light cover of lusters because they're all that will fit in the position, but you can actually get to them. So I focus them one way, and then each show we go, I know it's broad daylight when we're doing a between show focus, but pull the frost out, stick them on the full. We can tweak that focus. I would try and stay away from too many generics overhead. I'm lying, because 2 years ago we had a rig that had so many generics in it. It still had almost as many movers, but there were just tons and tons of saws. And that's just what it needed for a particular show. So that it was show specific. So I just had to have that set on stage in order to focus those fixtures. But generally, there wouldn't be generic fixtures that were trying to work across different productions. They're going to be specific to one scenic environment.
Yes, absolutely. I was thinking of I've done some stuff at Pitlochry in Scotland, and it's 6 shows in the season, and they rep from, I think it's like May till October or something, and there's one sort of fixed coverage, really area coverage, and you do sort of spend your whole life tweaking things as you see the next set, going, oh, that does need to go in a bit, and then you get the next set and go, oh nope, back out, and you have to find that. I find that you end up sort of almost undoing hard work when you turn back around and something that can be really.
But can you do that? Can you do those little refocuses between different shows, or do you have to find one thing that works for everything?
Yes, there is a bit of a thing about that. That the generic cover, and this is interesting. This is about the sort of historic nature of things, isn't it? The generic sort of area coverage, you don't touch, but there is also a number of front of house specials that are refocusable between each one. But it was interesting because I did 2 out of the 6. It was Wayne Dowdeswell, myself, and Joe Town, and it was very we had 3 very different approaches, as you would, and I ended up using all my focusables front of house as just a 5-part straight in area cover, because all I needed was it to chip in now and again. and didn't want. I was like, you deal with the front cover then. I'm not going near that. Very tricky. Yeah. Is that a thing? Do you get that? I mean, somewhere like the NT, do they have a fixed front house focus or anything, or is it not really that?
There is, yeah. It's quite steep, but somehow it gets into people's eyes. I think it gets into people's eyes because the Olivier forces actors up because the stalls are relatively steep and circles up there. So it feels too steep to work, but then it does. And that's 2K Robert Juliet's with scrollers on the front, coming in from bridges, doing a kind of 45, little tiny bit steeper thing. And they've got a fixed rig of parkans, or they did have, on the Tobes is the name of the position, which if you've ever been in the Olivier is the layers of balconies or lighting positions at 45 degrees to the stage above the ashtrays. And they were swapping them out for VL 800 event pars as I got in there. And VL 800 event pars turned out, I don't know what they're like now, turned out not to be ready.
Right.
It was broken and the colour chips were wrong, and so I ended up not using that at all. But that would have been part of the fixed rig. And they were like, "Oh, we'll put all the scrollers back in." Like, I don't think I was going to use them anyway.
Yeah. Don't worry about that bit. Yeah.
But, Santa Fe Opera is an interesting one because there are a handful of things. There's a backlight parkan cover with scrollers on it, which is fixed, and everything else is refocusable. There are not that many moving lights. They get a couple of extra moving lights every year because that's their budget amount. They buy everything.
Yeah. Okay.
They get a couple of extra movers each year to put in the best positions, and generally they're swapping out 2.5K HMIs or something for a moving light because who wants to maintain a 2.5K HMI?
Yeah.
But they're just masses and masses of source fours, and they scratch everything every day. They defocus the entire rig.
Oh my word!
Their whole crew. There's a master electrician and a deputy, and a load of lighting supervisors looking after different shows. But the crew is all apprentices.
Yeah.
And they learn how to focus. And I've come across people at American theatres who've been through Santa Fe. God, they can focus a source four really well, really fast. Brilliant. And one of their jobs is at the end of every show, they go up through all the catwalks. It's all catwalks overhead. There's no flying or anything. Okay. And they defocus every light in the rig. Even if the next time that light is going to get used, because it hasn't been used on a couple of shows, is for the same show in 2 days' time, they will go around, defocus everything, all the colour, all the frost, every shutter cut comes out.
Wow.
Every night.
That's crazy.
And then the next day, their focus session, so the set will go in. I think they get 90 minutes to focus the entire rig. And that's 2 supervisors on stage calling focus. It's daylight. There's not a lot of, it's not like Garsington, but there is daylight getting on stage. And the show starts at sunset, so it's kind of gone by then. But the focus session is always in daylight. And they get 90 minutes to focus the entire rig from scratch.
Wow.
And they get it done every day. And there'll be a focus, a kind of grid on the floor, just a grid cloth of like, they would be meter marks to us, but they're all foot marks on the floor.
That's brilliant.
And one programmer just bringing up everything, from 2 people calling it on radios to the programmer, and then them calling it to a team of 6 who are running around in the catwalks, and everyone's ready.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Someone's focusing one light. I don't know, 2 people are focusing 2 lights for 2 different people at the same time. And everyone else at there knows exactly what's going to happen next, so they're on the next slide. Yeah. And it comes up, they're like, oh, there it is. Point it here, cut, frost, good, next. And I went there as a tourist before I lit anything there. And that was a thing to watch. I went in during the afternoon and watched them focus their entire rig in 90 minutes. Like, wow.
That's fantastic.
And that was important. That I didn't know I was going to light a show there at that point. I just happened to be in the area. But when I went in as a lighting designer, to understand that really was what they did every day, and that nothing was too big an ask in terms of there were certain parameters that you couldn't go beyond. There was only a certain pool of additional equipment. There was only a certain amount of time. But they really could refocus their entire rig in 90 minutes. You know, don't think that you can't do that. And the first show I did there, we used most of that rig. I couldn't go to the focus session, so I gave them a focus note because they didn't want to fly me out for the focus session because it was before the season started.
Okay.
I sent the focus notes and they focused the entire rig to my notes, except slightly better. And sent back notes going, this thing you want to do with that light, we couldn't quite do it with that light, so we swapped it around for this. Is that okay? And here's photos of everything that we've done. here are the few things we think maybe you want to think about changing. Like
that's incredible.
The level of service there is amazing, which is why we ended up with a Garsington rig with loads of generics in it, because there's a show from Santa Fe that then came to Garsington.
Okay.
It was lit with a lot of generics, and there just wasn't a way of unpicking that particular show into it being a moving light show.
That's incredible. I mean,
and then the second year I went there, this fixed rig overhead, I'm not going to use it. I'm lighting a show for David Alden, and he does not like any of those angles. And they're like, yeah, but just like, don't do as detailed as you did last time, but just send us some rough notes for how you want it focused, because we like focusing lights, and it's part of the process. And then they'll all be focused, and you can change it when you get here. And they just didn't, I never used it.
That's incredible.
A handful of bits of kit, but every day we went into a stage rehearsal, they would focus the entire rig for me, even though I'm like, I'm not going to use it. I'm like, we're going to focus it anyway.
Yeah. Can you imagine going into somewhere in this country and saying every day you're going to do this this whole focus in that time? I mean, it'd be chaos.
Yeah.
It'd be mental. We've got a question coming here.
Oh, good.
That says, as a Southwest-based creative, knee-high was always promoted to me at school as the standard for work, especially with the creative process behind the creation of work. Would you say this early career of working with restrictions such as the fringe rig and the process at knee-high helped you think more creatively around the limitations that rep rig sometimes brings?
Yes. That's a bad answer, isn't it? Yes is a really bad answer, but yes, absolutely. I think my whole process is based around what I learned with knee-high. Not quite everything, but pretty much. And that is weirdly, it's about planning, even though knee-high is this really free associating kind of company where, we're not coming in with a rigid plan. From planning to total flexibility, like knowing that I've got ideas, but we may end up with a completely different idea, because you can go to rehearsals one day and someone in that room will have a really good idea and the show changes direction. You're going somewhere else with it. Or we'll get on stage and go, yeah, that piece of set, we just don't really need that anymore, do we? Oh, but I've lit it really nicely. Yeah, get rid of it. Scenes coming and going. Things getting reblocked when you finally get on a theatre stage, because there's we've done it in a rehearsal room at the Barnes in Cornwall, which is too small. And you get on stage and all the blocking changes. I remember my first show with them going, you can't do this to me. You can't reblock the entire show once we get on stage.
Yeah.
But it turns out, of course, that was the right thing to do. It wasn't necessarily the perfect process. But if that's the best thing for the show, then I've got to respond to that.
Yeah.
Just remaining calm and open is hopefully how I work. And there are bad days, there are dark days, but they're few and far between. Because I think knee-high are an incredible teaching resource for me, and I hope the resources they've made available online kind of tell you something about how they work, because it is still unusual.
Definitely.
But in terms of how to work with the rep rig, it is a really good question. I've done shows with Emma with rep rigs. We've done English National Opera, we've done 2 different theatres at the RSC, we've done the Courtyard and the Swan, and we've toured shows to America that have had to shoehorn their way into a rep rig, even though that wasn't where they were coming from, which was probably some of my earliest work with rep rigs. And that was a learning curve, because there is a way of doing things. And I'd have to say to Emma, we can't do the thing that we've always done when we've toured the show around the UK, because this rig just doesn't have those lights in those places. But bear with me, I've got some other ideas. We're going to do something else. So don't be surprised. That thing we always loved isn't going to happen, because there will be something else. And that relationship of trust, her trust of me, my trust in her, and my trust that there will be a way of dealing with this. And that way is never to get angry with anybody, or to, even with myself, just being calm and open. And trying to understand what the situation is around you as it changes. It's lighting, isn't it? That is a tech. So what is the situation? How are things changing? What have I planned that does work? What have I planned that doesn't work? What's a better idea? What's a different idea?
Yeah.
What's the thing I need to let go of? What's the thing I need to go and find somehow? What's the conversation I need to have with who? And that conversation may be me going, I don't know what to do with this scene. I'm stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And another member of the creative team isn't going to tell me how to light that scene, but we can have a conversation about it and what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Just dramatically, narratively, atmospherically, and it can send me off somewhere else. And it may be that, quite often the director goes, oh, that scene, yeah, I was struggling with that one as well.
Yeah.
And quite often the one scene that I'm really struggling to know how to respond to is the scene that isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
Is the scene that doesn't fit in the show, or the thing, I'm trying to fix something with lighting, which is fundamentally a bit broken.
Yeah.
I'll fix it with lighting. But it's something we hear in a rehearsal room quite often. Oh, we'll fix that with lighting. Like, yes, we will. Yeah, of course we will. But sometimes, I'm going to fix that.
Absolutely. Did you ever?
But then you've got to bite your tongue and just wait until, or have a better idea to fix it, or bite your tongue and know that the day will come when the better idea comes, or that scene gets cut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's almost one or the other, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever have a point when you were sort of, I suppose, progressing through your career where you were working with big rigs and smaller rigs? Like, how did you adjust to jumping between the two and limiting your, not limiting your ideas, that's a naff way of saying that, but you sort of know what I mean.
Sometimes it's really easy to make bad work with big rigs.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy. Once you turn on too many lights, without a really clear idea, just make a mess. Yeah. So those restrictions, maybe it's slightly glib saying it, but those restrictions can create really good work, because you have to rigorously think about how you're using limited resources. Yeah. Whereas you get, I think in the Olivier, the style I had for that show was not very many lights were on at any one time. Really big, strong key lights. I think it was Paulie Constable gave me the best advice, which was second-hand, I think, through Vicky Mortimer. Neither of whom were working on the show I was on, which is treat the Olivier as a studio theatre. Yeah. It feels daunting because it's just so big and such, it's not like anywhere else. Everything's incredibly high. It's enormous and it's exposed, and you've got to make a picture which responds to that space. Yeah. And scenically, there doesn't tend to be a huge amount of scenery going on. No one's trying to build something in that whole space. They're making little interventions. But yeah, treating it as a studio theatre and therefore using far less equipment. Yeah. Even though all the equipment is there, for me, was making the best pictures.
Yeah, definitely. That's brilliant.
And the problem with the standard rep rig of this is you do end up turning on lots and lots of lights, and there's no idea. Where's the idea gone? It's just a bit of a fudge. Yeah. And at those moments, when I'm hopefully working with someone I really trust and know, is just go, sorry, can we just stop? Yeah. They're like, it's fine. Like, no, just I'm just going to turn all the lights off. Yeah. And then we're going to start again with this scene, because this has just turned into an awful mess. Yeah, absolutely. And just figuring out the one thing that might have been useful from where you were at, and then building something new around it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, rep rigs can be a nightmare for that, for just ending up turning on too many lights. Yeah, totally. Which we had. There's a scene in Romantics Anonymous, which was a mess. Didn't mean anything. Okay. But the lighting, I think the lighting state has to mean something. Yeah. And me and Vicky were looking at it and was going, this looks terrible. It looks terrible on camera. Of course it looks terrible. Actually, no, it looks all right on stage. And yeah, this was a stage show that we made for a live audience, and it looks kind of cool on stage, but on camera it looks like nothing. It's just a mess. And it was a matter of having a completely new idea to respond to the fact that it just wasn't working on camera. Okay. Yeah, I did wonder if you then see the picture and went, oh, that's what we tried to achieve. Now I'm going to try and achieve the same thing. But obviously you just went, no, let's rather than. There was one particular scene in the show, but yeah, it was just a start from scratch. Yeah. And actually it ended up looking quite cool. It's like, and then I looked at the stage and went, oh, it looks terrible. It looks really good on camera, so let's stick with that. Yeah, I think something you said earlier, I think it's totally true. I have a I don't mind saying I have a slight fear that we're going to go into the world of half audience, half streamed, and you go, well, who
everybody's paying, and everyone deserves to have the same story, but who, it doesn't work. There's not one solution that works for both, so there's going to be compromise in both bits, sadly.
Yeah, and we'll need more time to make sure that we're making the right decisions for everybody.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
more understanding from our collaborators that we're trying to do something for two different audiences.
Yeah.
Whereas scenically and costume-wise, that probably isn't the case. Music and sound-wise, sound obviously has to work in a different way technically, but it probably isn't the case completely. Mm-hmm. Directors can pick the shots, and that can make a big difference. Mm-hmm. But yeah, lighting could be being pulled in two very different directions.
Yeah, definitely.
And we'll need time and good conversations to make sure we're making the right choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, time. Good.
Yeah, okay, we might not get that.
We're sort of coming to the end now, but I've been doing a little thing at the end. There's just sort of 5 little quick fire questions. So I'm going to start with, and it's particularly aimed at these sort of opera festival moments, your favourite late night plotting snack.
There was a tradition at Gelsington Opera at the old place, which was port and cheese. Yeah, and it never came out until pretty late in the evening. Like, you don't want to start your late night plotting session with that, but an hour before the end, it's okay to have a little tiny glass of port. I'm not a port drinker generally, but it's just warming when it's got a bit cold. Yeah, it goes really well with cheese, it turns out. Yeah. But at the new venue, everyone has to drive. Like, it used to be we were in a village and you could all walk home or stumble home, depending on how busy it had been for different people. But yeah, we can't do the port anymore, sadly. But the cheese comes out. Yeah, quite right. Yeah. Do you have a career goal that you still want to tick? God, I mean, I'd like to get back to work. Well, yes, that's not a career goal, is it? That's having a career. I don't think I've ever been ambitious. Okay. In what I understand ambition to mean, as in, people would say, "Do you want to write a West End musical?" I'm going, yeah, sure, but I'm not pushing myself in a direction to do that. All I've ever wanted to do is make really good work with the people around me, and hopefully 90+% of the time enjoy that process of doing it. So it's a matter of continuing to do that, which inevitably will bring up new relationships and new challenges and new opportunities. I guess pushing myself into opera was one thing. Opera, I try to keep it quiet in the opera scene, but it's not my favourite art form at all. I love live theatre, and I love the kind of the openness of Emma's work, where there's the fourth wall has always been removed, and someone is always talking to the audience, even if it's one moment in the show. That wall is broken, and it's an admission that the audience and the performers are in the same space. As each other, which is fundamentally what theatre is for me. And that's rarely acknowledged. And I think so much work happens behind an invisible screen already. Now it's on a real screen, but an invisible screen that says the audience are in a different space. So continue making work like that, and I guess I don't generate work. I respond to what other people make happen. Interesting, So it's about maybe developing some exciting new relationships, or continuing relationships with people who are making new work heading in new directions. I did one really big an outdoor spectacular was this time last year in Austria for 100,000 people on the banks of the River Danube in Linz, and that was really exciting. That's cool. And all of us as a creative team had never done anything quite like that before, and we all at the end went, "Should we do a bit more of this?" And we're like, "Yeah, go on." But we just need a city to invite us to do something like that. I'm not in a position to make those events happen. But to do a bit more of that it really got me excited about the relationship of the audience to the stage. The relationship of the audience to the event. That was 100,000 people who hadn't paid, who turned up for a thing which lasted 1 hour, only ever happened once. And and it was a bit flawed as well, because weirdly we thrive on having previews and such like, so a one-off event's never going to be perfect, but I got pretty excited about that. Something that you do to turn it around when you're having a rubbish day. I mean, I used to take a pretend cigarette break
Okay.
because, leaving the production desk for 3 minutes to
Yeah.
go and walk around the building in the fresh air isn't really an acceptable thing to do. Whereas it used to be until quite recently that saying you need to go outside for a smoke was fine. So
Yeah.
that worked really well. I've never smoked in my life, but and sometimes you meet people out there and have good conversation, which actually does inform going back in.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there's time for a break to actually step outside, I mean, sometimes you find yourself in that 2-hour chunk of tech where you're not going to be able to get away from the production desk, at which point you can't.
Yeah.
A little walk
Yeah.
with no particular objective, even if it's only 2 or 3 minutes around the building.
Yeah, that's a fantastic one. Yeah.
Really help.
If you could go back to the theatre right now and watch one thing, what would it be?
Something that I'd never seen before, which got me really excited about the form of theatre, and maybe it was pure entertainment and maybe it really challenged me. Like, there are amazing things I've seen before, but I know that going back to them a second time, it wouldn't have the same effect. So I guess there might be something feel good to go back to that I'd seen before, but the really formative work that I've seen, like, really epic bit of Robert Lepage or the Revo, a Russian company I got really into in the 90s, just making this wacky, crazy work where they shout at you for the first 5 minutes and beat each other with sticks, and then suddenly the most beautiful thing you'd ever seen would appear out of nowhere in silence for 10 minutes of some mist rolling and someone eating a watermelon.
That's amazing, yeah.
There's a lot of diverse work out there. So yeah, I'd want to go and see something that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah, definitely. My final question for you: if you had to write an autobiography right now, what would the title be?
It's a mean question. That's hard. What the title? I can't even think of a cliche now. You wouldn't want a cliche, would you? I mean, there's probably a really good one. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of some of the. So I've asked. That's one question I've asked everyone. We've had. I think Bruno's one was sitting in the dark, turning lights on and off.
Yeah, good.
I'm trying to think. Joanna Towns, her middle initial is E, so she's Jet. Her initials. So she said, "Life in the jet stream," was which I thought was great. Prema was "Be the change you want to see."
Nice. Yeah.
That was the sort of vibe.
I guess it would have to be something Cornish related.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. It would be, doing handstands in a field or something, not that. But like the things that have really made a difference on those knee-high shows have been going for a run in the morning with people, or realising that the rehearsal I'm watching is going nowhere interesting in the next hour.
Yeah.
And walking down to the beach and getting in the sea.
Yeah.
And then coming back and going, has anything happened here?
Yeah.
The most useful thing I can do for the next hour is put dinner on for everybody.
That's
in fact, putting dinner on for everyone.
I think that should definitely be the title. Paddling in the sea and putting dinner on.
Making dinner for the team. Yeah, I'm going to have to come back to you with.
That's I like this sort of Cornwall connection. That's nice. Thank you so much for your time. That is us.
Okay.
It's been absolutely fantastic to talk to you.
Total pleasure. It flew by.
It has flown by, absolutely. Yes, so thank you so much for giving up your time, and hopefully we'll do something similar soon. Maybe